Hi students, welcome to a quick lab safety video to give you a quick overview of some of the things that we need to abide by when we're in the lab. So first off, keeping a professional attitude in the lab is extremely important. It's an awesome experience to be in the lab and to do fun experiments and try things out, but you must follow all the guidelines and treat the lab as a professional working environment. So we're really only there to do our experiment and to learn. It's not a place to horse around or do anything silly. That's the seriousness of what we're doing. And the reason is because we're using chemicals that could potentially harm you if not respected properly. So to kind of encourage good behavior and following the rules and knowing the rules, there is a possible point deduction for not following rules. I don't give points for following rules, but if you are, seen not following rules, there might be some points lost on your lab. We'll get to a couple things that are really important in a second. When you're reading a lab procedure, you really have to make sure that you know what you're about to do. So read that procedure before, do the pre-lab, and just be ready for the day. But never ever do something outside of what the lab procedure tells you. Unless we're doing a guided inquiry lab, which in that case, you guys sometimes get to come up with your own experiment of what you want to do. In that case, it's a little bit different, but in the most cases, you need to follow exactly what it says on there. Don't try just mixing anything because you want to see what happens. Unless that's part of the lab, always check for, check with your teacher, check with me if you're going to do something that's not written explicitly on there. But no other unauthorized experiments, things could go wrong if we do that. And also just keeping the materials in class. You're never allowed to take anything home. I think that should be obvious, but everything stays in the lab. Wearing personal protective equipment. Now, this is kind of going back to that first thing of, following the rules and treating it as a professional environment. We need to wear professional clothing when we're in there. And so one thing in particular that is very important, I actually don't have it on this slide. I meant to make a slide, I forgot, but is just what we need to wear to lab. So not only the things that you put on your body, but the things that you should come to lab wearing. You should be wearing clothing that covers you. It doesn't have to be like a big thick sweatshirt or anything, but it is best if you're wearing something that does go down to your sleeve, that has sleeves perhaps. If not, that's okay, but you just want to be careful, mindful of your arms when you're in the lab. We just want to keep things off our skin. Big thing is to wear the apron that we give you in lab and make sure that you've always got that ready and that it's clean and that you're ready to use it before you start anything with the lab. Also, wearing goggles. This is super important. And with the apron and the goggles, that's from the start of lab till after cleanup. Obviously, when you're cleaning, you could get things on your clothes or on your any part of your body. So we want to keep the apron on. That protects most of our center of our body, our torso. It's super flattering looking, that big black apron, but you got to keep it on, and you'll want to just keep all the things off of you and splashing. Additionally, the goggles obviously keep the splashing out of your eyes as you're cleaning a beaker or something like that. The material could come up and splash you in the eye, so we keep the goggles on, especially during cleanup. There's a note there about added dangers for contact lens wearers. This is pretty minor actually nowadays, but it is important to note that there have been incidents where vapors from a lab can get into a contact lens and actually cause irritation or even very serious damage to your eye. You obviously want to be very careful around strong acids, which we occasionally will work with in the lab. And if that's the case, I'll be sure to give you a reminder about being careful. If you have contact lenses, you're allowed to wear them, but it's just something to be in consideration of. If you are wearing contact lenses, sometimes there's a potential for extra risk. Most chemistry labs, though, have actually done away. Even OSHA, the official health and safety office, has actually done away with the contact lens sort of ban in labs these days. But it's just something to be aware of. And then the last thing that's also not on this slide, again, I'm sorry, is to wear shoes, closed-toed shoes. You may not wear sandals in the lab. If you're wearing sandals on lab day, I'm going to have to ask you to wear your gym shoes or something like that. You cannot wear open-toed shoes on lab day, I think for obvious reasons, but to make it clear, you don't want to spill acid on your toe. So we have to wear closed-toed shoes in lab. Now, again, with goggles, now goggles can be kind of a bit irritating to wear, especially for a long time in the lab. So if you need to take your goggles off, you can actually step outside of the lab to do that, but you must keep them on all the entire duration of the lab. Something that a lot of students do is that they'll put them up on their forehead. I know that looks really cool in anime and everything, but you may not put goggles on your forehead in lab. If you're caught with the goggles on your forehead, you get one warning and then it's lab points taken off. So do not test that. Just make sure we do not keep the goggles on our forehead. That's not allowed in the lab. We always keep them. Oops, got something up with my my slide here. There we go. We always keep them on our eyes, just like this lab here has proper lab attire. Reporting all accidents, breaks, and injuries. So if anything happens, even if it's minor, let me know. Let your teacher know to make sure that everybody's okay, especially if you get cut with something or something happens that it could come from a chemical. Beware of hot glass. Hot glass looks exactly like cold glass, so be careful when picking up a hot beaker. We have tools for that. Watch out for any chipped glassware or cracked glassware. And this fourth point kind of goes with that as well. But if it's broken, don't use it. Let me know. It doesn't need to be used. We have more. These pieces of equipment are very expensive. This big broken beaker here is 1,000 milliliters. It is probably in the network of maybe $200-300 to buy a new one. But we do not want to use something like that. We need to throw it away. If you do break something, tell your teacher immediately. We want to handle equipment very, very carefully in the lab. If you break something, please let me know, but we want to try to avoid any breaks at all, if possible. Breaks really only happen when people are going too fast. Keeping the aisles clear in the lab spaces clutter-free. You really only take what you need to the lab bench. Don't bring anything else to the lab bench. Leave it back at your desk, and be sure to put your backpack and things underneath your desk just to keep anybody from tripping. Of course, in a lab, we don't want to be tripping while we're trying to cook something or use harsh chemicals. Where the equipment is in the class for safety. There's several safety equipment items, and we'll be sure to cover where they are in the classroom. But the fire extinguisher is a big one. Fire blanket has a dual use as to smother a fire or even to dam a spilled liquid that's a harsh liquid. Eye wash stations, if you do get something in your eyes, even with the goggles on, there's a potential for damage, or if your goggles are off or whatever, there's a way to wash out your eyes in this very interesting looking eye wash station. And it's a little brutal, but it's better than having your eyes blinded. The goggle cabinet, that is a safety feature in our classroom, is having the goggle cabinet. It has a UV light inside that cooks off all the bacteria and anything that's on there, viruses, to keep things sanitary and clean. Let's keep that organized so that it can do its job. And then the trash and recycling containers, knowing where those are and not throwing any broken glassware in the trash. That can just cut right through the trash bag and hurt our custodians. So we have a special place for broken glassware. I'll let you know where that is in class. It's a cardboard box. Okay, a couple more and then we're done. Caution when smelling chemicals. Do not touch, taste, or smell chemicals unless you're directed. And if you are going to smell something, it can be tempting if you've got some like ammonia or vinegar that you notice it has a smell and you might want to give it a whiff. Do not stick your nose in a beaker or in any kind of a flask. You can actually burn out your sensory neurons in your nose if it's too strong. Like an acid can actually do that if you're smelling the vapor. So the way that we smell something in a lab, if you're directed to, is to waft it towards you, like this gentleman is doing. He's actually smelling the vapor of dry ice, but if you were to smell something, that's the way to do it. Second to last point here is how to dilute acids. Just a general rule, and it's one that we kind of always require that the way to remember this is do what you oughta. Add acid to water. The reason for this is actually that adding acid to water or water to acid in either order is an exothermic reaction, and so it actually creates heat, and a lot of heat can be created, especially when you're diluting a very strong acid like strong hydrochloric acid or nitric acid. If you're pouring that into water, there's a lot of energy that's released. But if you pour water into acid, that exothermic reaction can actually boil the water that you pour in, and can actually boil and not explode, but splatter the boiling water as it reacts with the acid. So always pour slowly and carefully, and never add water to acid. Always do what you oughta, add acid to water. So in that order, not the other order. And then lastly, cleanup. We want to make sure to clean the lab space very thoroughly for the courtesy of the next group, and just to keep things from sitting there. So we want to wipe down all surfaces with soap and water after we use them. And then with waste disposal, we always want to listen to directions on how to throw something away. Never assume it goes down the drain. Please never ever throw something just down the drain because it's clear or whatever. A lot of things will not go down the drain. It has to be poured into a waste container, and I'll let you know where those things are. So please always check before throwing something away at the end of the lab. Okay, that's it, and let's have fun in lab and stay safe. Thank you.